setting crazy, ridiculous goals. That's our conversation today on the podcast. Let's jump in. BJ O'Neill here with the Business Coaching Success Podcast. So glad you're here, where I share with you strategies, tools, and tips to be able to grow your business coaching practice to six figures and beyond as a Christian business coach. Let's jump in. Welcome. Glad that you were here on the podcast. Hard to believe that 2025 is nearing the very end. And as we, depending upon when you're listening to this, as we're either you are nearing 26 or we've just started 26, depending upon when you are playing this, maybe you're listening to this in the first quarter of 26. It's a great time towards the end of the year, beginning of the year, really any time, but to talk about goal setting. And out of full disclosure, I've got one main thing that I want to encourage you with. I've got one main idea that I want to leave you with for you to pray about, for you to ponder for you. And that's all about the way you set goals, how you interpret them, and the actions that come out of them to help you achieve what it is that you want to achieve. Before I jump into any of that, we're going to talk about a couple of things related to that today to get that point across. If you're considering utilizing your experience, perhaps you own a business, maybe you've owned a business, or you've been in leadership, an executive, a SVP, whatever the case may be. You want to use your experience. You just don't want to start over. You don't want to create the tools and resources, but you're curious about what using a complete and total done-for-you business coaching system, what that's like. I encourage you to go to businesscoachmastery.com. That's businesscoachmastery.com, or you can click on something in an email if you received this link through an email. If not, you can go to businesscoachmastery.com. There's some info you can get there. You can see all about our resources for you, as well as, if you're interested, you can book an Explore the Systems chat. We'll show you around the system so you can determine if it's the direction for you to learn more about or not. Goal setting. Here's the theme. Crazy goals, BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals, 10x goals. What's the other? There's one more. What's the one that I've heard people use? Doesn't matter. The point is, what's the purpose of setting, stretch goals. That's the word I was looking for. What's the purpose in doing that versus not? So we're in the season, you look at advancement, right? Like we don't ride horses anymore. We drive cars, right? So we advance as we learn things, discover things. That's the entire, premise behind the advancement of humanity. However, when it comes to goal setting, I see a lot of folks, especially related to growing a business, certainly growing a business coaching practice, is that we're kind of still doing what we've always done. So you likely have heard, and at one point in time, it was the right thing to do. I did it for many years, is to set SMART goals, right? You probably have heard that terminology. And the one letter in SMART, R, stood for, you may know this, realistic goals. So I want you to just, again, take some good notes. Listen to this a couple of times. It's going to matter to you. Here is the challenge. That's what we've done historically. We have said, let's set really obtainable and realistic goals. Okay. The problem with that, number one, is that if you fall short of the, in quotations, attainable and realistic goal, then you're nowhere close to the actual thing you're trying to develop, create, get to, desire, God's purpose, whatever it is that you feel like is on your heart to achieve. And I think historically, if you look at a lot of data, depending upon the different studies you read, but you can go Google it yourself if you'd like to, on average in the professional field, 80% or so goals are missed. Well, if we're setting SMART goals, realistic, obtainable goals, that means that 80% of the time, nearly the entire time, we're never actually achieving what it is that we want to achieve. So in the advancement of humanity, when we look at productivity, we can arguably circle that and go, okay, doing it that way likely really isn't the way to do it anymore. I would also make the argument, in my perspective, you don't have to adopt it per se, but in my perspective, that when we set realistic, obtainable anything, that's beige. In other words, bland, average. You look at the grading scale in school, and we all, go to school, go to college, all that kind of stuff, right? C is an average. Well, if we're missing 80% of our realistically obtainable goals, then we're doing well underneath average. What does this mean? It means that, okay, we can't look at it that way anymore. How should we look at it? And as of my opinion, as of today, and I've lived this, and I'm going to walk that out, is that we have to do this in a very different way. I'll give you one just quick little tidbit to it that's not business related per se. It's still goal related. A friend of mine in ministry had the desire that had become restless, and he just felt like that, God was putting it on his heart to plant a church. The question was where. Now, if you've never been a part of church plants, they are not for everybody. They're hard. They're tough. It's like starting a business. It's pretty much the same thing in terms of starting something from nothing. You got to sell a vision, location. You got to, communicate a message. You got to have income. Got to either raise money or whatever. And so they ended up in Las Vegas on a trip for something, and he was out in the in an area, and it was overlooking the city, and he felt right then, boom, the goal, the vision, the call, it's planting it right here in Sin City. Now, you can hear that goal, and on the onset, it's like, dude, man, you're planting a church in Las Vegas? That's a pretty tough deal. Like, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, so anywhere, honestly, in the South, I would never say that church planting is easy. But communicating the gospel in the Bible Belt is a totally different ballgame than when you're doing it in a place where there's not a lot of faith. Certainly, Vegas is one of those places. They call it Sin City for a reason. And so, just for context, fast forward nearly a decade later, that church is running between 700 and 800 people every single week. A building, thriving. I mean, it's a full-fledged, vibrant, healthy church that started with a dream and a goal and with no context of how to do it. What's the point? We're in the season now, whether you call it a big, hairy, audacious goal, whether you call it a stretch goal, whether you call it a 10x goal, whether you call it a crazy goal, you get to label it ever how you want to label it. The point is to set a goal that seems absurd. It's just to set a goal that seems ridiculous. Let me give you an example. If you wanted to earn, and I'm just saying this for lesson purposes only, if you wanted to earn $100,000 a year as a business strategist, consultant, coach, that would be the realistic, obtainable goal. Earning $600,000 a year would be the crazy stretch. And again, that may not be your numbers. It can be totally different, right? I'll give you a second example. We have in our business coach network, we've trained more than 350 coaches. We have more than 80 active right now as we speak, people who are in our network, who are participating in with clients and the whole thing. If you would have told me that I had an opportunity to train that many people and growing, I would have told you you're crazy. So we had a goal a couple of years ago, and it was absurd because when I said the goal, it was like, but I don't know how to do that. And that's the point. That's what I want you to walk away with. If you're setting goals and you understand how to obtain them, then that's beige, bland, obtainable. And if you miss it and 80% do, then you're nowhere close to where you actually want to be. And, some people have used the term, shoot for the moon, hit the stars. It's kind of true. Like when you set an absurd goal, and even if you miss it, you're going to be significantly further than the original obtainable goal. But there is one reason that's really the purpose of this podcast today. There's one main reason as to why this is so important and why it works. I think that you would agree, if you're listening to this episode, this podcast, you probably would agree that God created you, God created me. He created the human body, the brain, how we're wired, right? And so we're wired in such a way. Here's what happens. When it comes to goal setting, when you set a realistic, obtainable goal, that means that you already understand everything that's necessary to go and start to create activity related to that goal. And the brain essentially gets settled with the fact that I don't have to work that incredibly hard. We see this in businesses. We see this in organizations. We see this in churches all the time. A lot of people, and I'm going to be very careful not to purposely offend, but I don't mind to nudge you. They purposely set obtainable goals so that they don't have to work that hard. It's a true thing. It's a legit thing. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs that are, it's on them to go, eat what they kill. Not so much, but in corporate environments, a lot of folks are like, hey, let's just what's the lowest barrier bar? That's where I want to be. Now, some people like to manipulate that and go, I want to put that bar there so that when I achieve it, I get accolades, I get bonuses or whatever. That's a different conversation. But when we set realistic goals, we don't have to work that hard. When we set ridiculous, crazy, stretch, 10x, BHAG type goals, neurologically, the brain begins to search for new pathways for achievement. I'm going to say that again. When we set stretch, crazy, what seems to be unrealistic goals, BHAGs, 10x, again, label it how you want, the brain begins to search for new pathways for achievement because the brain does want to make the achievement, but it doesn't know what to do. And what does that mean? It's similar to like you're going down the road, and this is a little bit of a silly analogy, but you'll get the point. You're driving down the road. I've set this crazy, big, hairy, audacious goal, and I'm starting to sense and see things totally different. The way I interpret billboards, marketing messages, book titles, podcasts, like all of it. But we're driving down the road, and we're starting to recognize things differently because we're searching differently. It's like if you're in the business for buying a car, you're looking at cars totally different because your brain is wired to intercept and to receive information based upon what you're telling it. So when we're totally realistic, we stand a chance to somewhat subconsciously coast. But when we set it up to, we got to work, it starts to begin to sift subconsciously to find new pathways of opportunity. You start listening to other podcasts differently. You might buy a course that you would have never bought. You may engage in a conversation with somebody who's been down the road before you have in a different way to learn. Okay? So the biggest thing for today's purpose is setting large, crazy, stretch, unrealistic, what seems unobtainable goals isn't just because. It is because we're wired in such a manner that we're going to find things and consider things that we would have never done so had we to set realistic goals. That's one. The second thing, it's very important to understand timing. Because if we're setting the crazy goals big enough, we're not just trying to set them like if I was trying to earn 100 grand in 25, it would be a little bit, there is a thing as such as like the timing matters too. Moving right into 600,000 for 26 outside of some extremely unordinary and extraordinary differences, that's probably, not the timetable that's going to work. I'm a fan of circling big, hairy, audacious goals, if you've never done them before, to be a 36-month process. Because time, you do have to learn, educate, communicate, discover new relationships. Like that takes time. So some people think that just setting an unrealistic goal, I should be able to just go do it. No. Like the reality is, it's a neurological thing, but there is an unrealistic process that you can't expect it to happen overnight. Even history suggests us that, for that matter. You could do 5 years. That's your call. There's obviously everybody thinks a little differently, and your opinion is your opinion. You get to own it and walk it out the way you want to walk it out. The reason why I say 3 years is that, one, mentally, at least for me, I can wrap my head around 36 months. In my 50s, I understand 36 months is not that long of time. You get into 60 months, and it's like that just feels a lot further off, especially the 10-year plan, which It's fine to have visions for 10 years, but I think that 3 years is a solid number that I can begin to back into that number. So if it was beginning of 26, and then by the end of 28, like I can walk that out to what needs to happen throughout 28, throughout 27, and throughout 26 to achieve this potential big, hairy, audacious goal. So let's just break it out. If 600 grand was my number, and I'm at 100 grand, I got 500,000 as the delta. I can break that 500 up into 3 quadrants if I want to, or in some fashion. Maybe I put 70% of that number inside 28. It's up to you. But here, the bigger thing is I'm going to figure out different ways to do it. If I'm one-on-one, I might start to bring in group coaching. If I'm doing one-on-one, I could bring in group coaching, and you could partner with someone like us who could also, by the way, we have a done-for-you group coaching module where our team actually coaches your clients on your behalf. Like, utilizing and leveraging resources like that is a potential opportunity. But you may not think about that if you're just thinking about trying to be subpar with realistic goals. So for today's purpose, and we're going to get into more of this into the next few episodes, just about the process, the purpose, the how-tos, whatever, just some nuggets for you to really harness, is get comfortable with being uncomfortable with your goal setting. Now, look, we don't want to just do it for the sake of doing it. It's what you feel called to, what you feel drawn to, and why. Like most people do, start and have a business coaching practice for various reasons. It's not just to business coach. It could be flexibility. You want to create more income. You want to create legacy for your family, for your kids and grandkids, and so on. Your why is your why. And so for today's purpose, it's wrapping yourself around the idea that if you've not done it before, I've got to get really good at setting crazy goals where here's the test. You tell somebody about it, and they say, dude, that's ridiculous. Then you're typically onto something. Now, look, you can certainly set some ridiculous goals and then never actually create a plan. That we're not talking about that. We're going to walk that out in the next few episodes, just creating the plan around big, hairy, audacious, crazy 10x stretch, call it what you want, goals. But they're big, lofty, and they should scare you. They should force you to dream differently. They should force you to pray differently. That's at least my perspective. If you want to join us to learn more, again, go to businesscoachmastery.com. Until next time, take care.